All right. It is 3 o'clock on the dot in Eastern time. So we're going to go ahead and get started with today's event. Good afternoon or morning or night, depending on where you are joining us from today, and welcome. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Megan Ryan, and I am the project manager with the Disability Employment Technical Assistance Center, or DETAC. For those who may benefit from a visual description, I am a white woman in my 30s with medium length blonde hair, and today I'm wearing a beige collared shirt and have a blue virtual background. We are so excited to have you join us for today's webinar, which is titled Scaling Supported Employment with Large Businesses, Lessons from the Evolution of Microsoft Supported Employment Program. This is a topic we've been looking forward to sharing with you for some time, and we have an incredible lineup of speakers today who have really been at the forefront of this work. So before we get into the content, let me walk you through a few housekeeping items, and Donald, we can go to the next slide. All right. So before we dive in, just want to make sure everyone knows about the technology and accessibility features that we have in our Zoom today. So with respect to your audio settings, if you need to adjust your speakers, you can change those using the microphone icon at the lower left side of your Zoom window to change your speaker or adjust your settings. All participants are muted in today's event due to the size of our audience, though, so you won't be able to speak verbally during today's event. We do have American Sign Language or ASL interpretation, live English captions, and then Spanish machine translations offered during this event. And you can access the Spanish machine translations at the link in the chat. And then you can access the live English captions if you click the Show Captions button at the bottom of your Zoom window. We will have a little bit of time for questions and answers today, and we collected some questions through registration. We'll aim to cover a couple of those during the Q&A, but may not have time for too many because we have such a good lineup of speakers and they have a lot to share. One special plug for today's event is that if we don't get to your question, we are hosting an office hour this Thursday, which we'll share the registration link to in the chat, and invite you to come to that event if you have follow-up questions after our presenters present today. One common question just to address before we get into it, we often get asked, where are the slides? And my colleague Umema from the DETAC team will be dropping the link to the slides in the chat throughout the event. So we encourage you to access those at that link. This event is being recorded, and we will be posting the recording of both this and the office hour on Thursday within a week of these events. All right, with all that covered, let's take a quick look at our agenda, and Donald, we can go to the next slide. Thanks. All right, so we're in the middle of our welcome, housekeeping, and accessibility features. Next, we're going to just introduce our speakers really briefly and talk about what we hope you take away as far as learning objectives from today's event. Then we'll hear from Susan Harrell from WISE around the origin story and key components of the Microsoft Supported Employment Program. From there, we'll have Emma Ogazuma from Microsoft talk about the role of the built environment and how the physical workspace itself can support employee independence and retention. After that, we'll go to Jillian McGuire from CBRE and part of Microsoft Supported Employment to take us through program scaling and growth over the years. And then last but certainly not least, we're going to be hearing from Tara O'Rourke and Mike Shea, who are part of the Microsoft Supported Employment Program, and we'll be talking a little bit about their work together in Microsoft's Washington State, Redmond, Washington campus. And last but not least, we'll do some Q&A and have resources and closing. Let's go to the next slide. So our speakers today, we are just so fortunate to have an outstanding panel with us who bring a really wide range of perspectives on this program, and I hope that you have a lot to take away. So first off, I'd like to introduce Emma Ogazuma. Emma is the senior program lead for Microsoft's Global Accessibility and Inclusivity and Supported Employment program. Uh, Emma is an architect by training and brings a really unique lens to this work, looking at how the physical environment can either support or create barriers for employees with disabilities. And she'll talk a little bit about the built environment in her segment. Then we'll have Jillian McGuire, who is a senior program manager with CBRE at Microsoft Supported Employment Program. Jillian works more on the operational side and coordinates with suppliers and employment agencies to create the real job opportunities. Oh, I'm sorry, I went backwards. We're actually going to hear from Susan first and then Jillian. Sorry about that for the order of the slides. And then introducing Susan is we'll have Susan from the assistant executive director at WISE, the Washington Initiative for Supported Employment. And she's been deeply involved in this work going back decades and is going to talk about the origin story and how this partnership came together and the framework that made it possible to sustain and grow. And then Donald will go to the next slide. For our employee spotlight section, we'll hear from Tara O'Rourke, who's a cafe attendant with the Compass Group at Microsoft, and then Mike Shea, who is Tara's manager and is also with the Compass Group at Microsoft. And Donald, let's go to the next slide. I'll quickly talk learning objectives. All right. So here is what we hope you take away from today's event. We really want you to understand some steps for, how to build and scale supported employment partnerships for employers using this as an example. Also, we hope you can kind of identify the key roles of partners, including employers, funding agencies, service providers, and benefits planners in sustaining supported employment, hiring, and retention. And then last but not least, we hope you can apply some of these lessons from this established partnership to strengthen or replicate your own supported employment efforts with your own systems or stakeholders. And with that, I am pleased to invite Susan Harrell to turn on her video from the WISE team and join us to kick off her section. And let's just get Susan spotlighted and we should be good to go. All right, Donald, you can go to the next slide, and Susan, I will hand it over to you to take it from here.
Thank you, Megan. I'm thrilled to be here today. I'm Susan Harrell. I'm the Assistant Executive Director at WISE, and I am a upper middle-aged female. I go by she, her pronouns, and I am currently wearing a light blue sweater, have medium length brown hair, brown eyes, wearing a pair of glasses with a blurred background. And I, as Megan had said, have worked in the field of employment for people with significant disabilities dating clear back into the late 80s. So I guess I'm rather long in the tooth in some ways. But I think with all of that experience, I've been able to not only be part of the experiences of developing competitive integrated employment within community settings, but also to be able to watch the development and really see from a very enduring standpoint all of the different things that have happened in the evolution of the work that we're doing. And certainly the work with Microsoft has been a big part of that across the decades, as you'll see in the upcoming slides. Next. Okay, so we're going to go back to the late 80s, early 90s to think about where things began to occur in Washington State, with Microsoft being part of that development. In the late 80s, early 90s, Microsoft began to hire, and at the same time, within that Seattle area location of Microsoft, King County also was hiring, and the state of Washington began to increase efforts for hiring individuals with significant disabilities into supported employment. And at the same time, we saw some policy development in the early 2000s where there were expectations that began to be developed around employment in government, the government's role in influencing that within community. It started with a working age adult policy, as well as a governor's executive order around diversity in hiring and including people with significant disabilities in those efforts. That began to influence community education, and as we'll talk about in upcoming slides, it inspired champions that could influence on the ground hiring, and Microsoft again was part of that in ramping up their efforts to hire. And it really called on people to begin to think about their control and influence over hiring for people with disabilities, and really beginning to make that change on the ground and impact that in significant ways in Washington and really around the rest of the country and the world. And really the 2012 to 2013 plus framework for change, when it came to large hiring efforts, really began to think about new models that impacted quality, scalability, and sustainability in a really more global way in order to impact the hiring of more and more people with disabilities into community workplaces. Next. So those early commitments in the 80s through about 2002, around 1988, 1989, through the early 1990s, approximately 30 people were hired at Microsoft. So that was the beginning of Microsoft stepping in a very small way, given that they're a large employer, into hiring people with disabilities. I think that's really an important viewpoint that they had in looking at it one by one with hiring into various different kinds of environments within the Microsoft campus, so that they began to understand the value of supported employment. At the same time, in King County, so the county where Microsoft's Redmond campus is located, there were about 80 people hired within those agencies. And again, it began with a commitment to hire and starting to think about the best environments and the best fits for people with disabilities. And simultaneous to that, well, not even quite simultaneous, but as a result of that, the city of Seattle began to hire folks. And so beginning in about 1998, there were about 10 people hired at the city of Seattle. All of these things have continued to increase. So the numbers that were present in those early years continued to grow over time. And all of those programs are still in play. In 1999, the state of Washington stepped in to have, they passed legislation that created a program for supported employment in state government. And between 1999 and 2002, approximately 100 people were hired into state agencies. And this, incidentally, was the point at which I began working on thinking about scalable efforts. So I was brought in as one of 7 job developers that helped to create the structure for that supported employment in state government program. And there was one key figure who first began in the King County area and later became the governor of the state of Washington, Gary Locke, who benefited from the experiences that he was able to observe within Microsoft, within King County, and ultimately brought that to the state of Washington and helped to create the kind of leadership that impacted the hiring of this people in supported employment in state government. So I always think about these things where it's hard to say exactly where something originated, because influence comes from all kinds of directions. And when somebody is really embedded in a community that influences their perspective, they can take that and rise into greater and greater leadership and influence in all of the roles that they are in as well. So from a small seed, great change can be made. Next slide. And between 2004 and 2013, I would say that this is where I was speaking earlier about policy beginning to increase expectations, and then it feeds into information and ultimately practice. In 2004, the working age adult policy was passed in Washington State, or created, which really set the stage for employment first, real jobs for sustainable wages. And this was an expectation that our Developmental Disabilities Administration carried forth. And they asked for technical assistance, training, and family support to assist with that. In 2012, there was the legislation for Employment First in Washington State. So it was actually implemented in law. So it followed our working age adult policy. And then in 2013, the governor had that executive order that we talked about, where it called for 5% workforce representation for people with disabilities, and that he expected the state to be a model employer. Next slide. Between 2012 and 2013, as a part of that information and education to community members, King County hosted a transition event for parents and individuals, students, as well as educators, where they really discussed when the school bus stops coming, when individuals are moving away from the school system and looking towards adult activities, employment, and that often when the school bus stops coming, people don't have that next step into employment. And within that audience was the leader of the Global Real Estate and Facilities section at Microsoft. He happened to be a parent of a 14-year-old with autism, and he really was astounded that he couldn't expect that his 14-year-old daughter would just easily move into a job after the high school program ended. And this caused him to think a lot about his own impact, because he not only was looking at the Microsoft campus in Puget Sound, where there were 40 to 60,000 staff in 2012, but he also had this potential to influence much more broadly and have global impact. So really, that was the beginning. They had already started hiring. They had 30 people at Microsoft on the Microsoft campus, and he began to think that that was not enough and that he could do more. Next slide. So this is where I came in with the project. He reached out to King County to say, who can help us with this? And ultimately, I was brought on as a third-party subject matter expert to help them with their program design. And the reason I was brought on instead of bringing on a job developer within a local employment agency is because there was a recognition that they weren't going to be able to have one agency have all of the potential individuals that might be hired into the program. And he really wanted a more broad perspective to look at scalability and sustainability, and to think about how they can move it from the area that they resided in the Puget Sound area to other areas where Microsoft is present. So I provided that information, and I was able to take some ideas, think about them based on some of the desires, the goals, the needs of Microsoft, and I could go out into the broader community to ask experts to give me their opinion of my viewpoint and the options I was presenting as well. And really, this part of the project, I used a lot of the information I gathered in creating the Supported Employment in State Government program with that team of job developers. I could bring that perspective and thinking about ways in which you could expand in significant ways. Next slide. And ultimately, in building the framework, I talked about scalability and sustainability, but quality was a big factor as well, because you can't really have something sustain or scale without an eye towards quality. And a lot of it focused on minimizing chaos. So thinking about centralizing information and tracking, optimizing resources. So not just funding partners, but also thinking about things like benefits planning and leveraging those partners within those resources to be able to address issues without taking that all on at Microsoft itself. And ultimately thinking about decreasing bottlenecks so that when there was a job, when there was an opportunity, that things would flow smoothly and that the hiring managers could expect that if they stepped in and decided they wanted to create a job, that it all went smoothly from their end and that there was a good experience for the individual with disabilities, the managers of those departments, and everybody involved. Next slide. So the key components of this, I know I'm down to a couple of minutes, so I'll go through this briefly and we can cover more in the office hours. But I have the classic sort of boxes here that help to describe the areas of focus or the key components. So within job development, the things that we focused on really were around, does job development happen with external job developers coming in from employment agencies? Does job development happen by Microsoft bringing on somebody that just stays there and works on it and that is their role? Or does Microsoft develop it within the vendor community where they are connected and understand all of the different supplier needs and can influence it in that way? And ultimately, Microsoft decided to work with CBRE to help and assist with that job development and other roles as well, not to minimize what the community of job developers could do, because they felt like that was something that those job developers could assist with sourcing. They could assist with job coaching. They were the ones that knew their customers best. But if we were looking at hiring hundreds of people on that campus, there was no way that one singular employment agency was going to be able to have enough candidates to source and or to make it work smoothly without bottlenecking. We also, so I went into the assisted sourcing, we went into the operations sustainability, which included the job coaching, training of managers for to prep the workplace, to think about the natural supports that might exist, to really consider other needs that might be in play, like long-term funding, making sure that was smooth, making sure that the benefits planning was in play, assuring that there were ways to continue to keep everything going in a smooth, successful, quality manner over the long haul. And then this program leadership piece was really about not just having the champion of the program influence things, but being able to have long-term monitoring of the program and goal setting for the program and some level of accountability on an ongoing basis to the hiring managers, as well as Microsoft leadership and the broader community to continue to grow the program and to think about ways in which it could extend to other areas over time. And that has continued to endure. And I'm sure that Jillian will talk more about this particular piece since she has been sitting in that role for a while. But they have done so much to try to continue to fuel efforts, as well as to help share information with other employers and take the lead or have a voice when there are major issues that arise where they can speak as an employer and influence change. And overall, I just say it has been such an amazing partnership with them and with them in the lead with Microsoft and then with CBRE being embedded in that program leadership. It has really taken on a life of its own in a lot of ways. They have done so much more than I could have ever imagined. And it has been such a gift and such a pleasure to see an employer step into it in a really amazing fashion. Next slide. So I wanted to supply a few resources for people to look to. I can share more during the office hours as needed. But the first one is the supported employment program approach, which talks about the program structure. It really speaks to one of the earlier versions, like this was from 2013, 2014, one of the earlier versions of the setup for the program. You could go to Microsoft's supported employment site to take a look at how it has evolved, but I thought this was a really important resource for those of you that want to take a look at how it was set up in those early stages. The next one is the employment agency request for information. This was the way in which Microsoft recruited supported employment entities to be a source of recruiting potential applicants, supported employees over time. And then the supported employment program manager draft job description is one of the earlier drafts of the document that was utilized to set up what was going to be expected for that key job developer role within Microsoft's supplier community. So I thought that might be interesting framework for you as well. The Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, Expedited Eligibility, and Referral Checklist. This was one of the things that was a systems change effort to assure that individuals who were offered jobs would easily be able to become eligible for VR services for that upfront training, because there was a concern that that might be a bottleneck. And so this is a good example of the way in which Voc Rehab was brought into a meeting with Microsoft, and they stepped up to be able to assure that they had a point of contact and a process that made it very easy for people who were offered jobs to be able to expect that there would be usually less than a 2-week turnaround for funding to be matched and for them to be ready to go. And then the benefits planning information and assistance. We have a partnership with Microsoft around benefits planning. We have a benefits planning service at WISE. And so we've been able to do great things with them where they know that there may be something that they need to address, like a big raise for 100 people at Microsoft within their supplier community, and they've come to us to ask us to triage those situations and figure out who we need to meet with and what kinds of benefits planning issues need to be resolved along the way. That has been a continuing partnership with them. And again, this is one of the ways in which it's been such a pleasure working in this effort to see how things have continued to evolve and grow. And that partnership is really inspiring to me. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Emma Ogazama. She is with Microsoft. She is located in London, so she is coming from a long ways away. And can we go to the next slide? I believe it's the one for Emma. And I'll
Thank
turn
you,
it over to
Susan.
you now, Emma. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Susan. That was a wonderful origin story. Thank you for sharing it. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. I'm Emma Ogazuma. I lead the Microsoft Global programs for the supported employment and accessibility and inclusivity programs, and that's under our global workplace strategy team. I am a female in my early 40s. I'm wearing a black top today, and I have my dark brown hair pulled to my back. And as Susan said, I am based in the UK, so apologies in advance if you see the lights go off. It's just the sensor lights telling me I'm not moving around enough. So you'll see me move around a bit to get the lights to come back on. Right, today I would like us to explore the role of the built environment in a successful supported employment program. The supported employment programs successfully get people into work, but the environment determines whether people are staying, if people are growing, if they require constant support, and unfortunately, eventually leave if they're not feeling comfortable in that environment. So today we'll briefly explore how the built environment acts as a retention strategy and also a support tool really for job coaches as well as the supported employees as well. Interestingly, one of the most overlooked partners in any supported employment program sometimes is the workplace itself. So job coaches are there and they don't just support people. Employers are not just hiring people, buildings silently are either removing or reinforcing the need for support in itself. So when someone arrives at work, the very first interaction they have is with the environment. Or when we arrive anywhere for the first time, our very first interaction is with that built environment. And something as simple as a clearly defined route or a predictable entrance when people arrive, or accessible controls within reach. These can replace things like verbal prompts or escorting and repeated orientation training. So really, an accessible environment begins acting as a silent coach, supporting orientation, supporting with navigation, and also independence, which is key before human support is even required. Next slide, please. Thank you. Now, I say here on this slide, I'm looking at a building as a silent coach. And you say, Emma, how is the building a silent coach? And for this one, I'm going to tell a story. So River works as a mailroom operative on a large campus. Their typical day's job is to collect mail, sort things, deliver mail across multiple buildings in this campus. In many workplaces, that job will depend on constant supervision, repeated instructions, and memorizing complex routes across the campus. But in this campus, River doesn't rely on a person to guide them. The environment does that for River. So you have things like clear color-coded routes, simple, clear signage, consistent layouts, step-free pathways. They guide River from the start to finish at every stage of the campus and at every stage of that route in collecting and delivering and sorting mail. The campus is quietly saying back, you're on the right path, because it's giving them the color, coordinated routes, color-coded routes. So River doesn't need to remember every single thing. They don't need continuous support. They can work independently with confidence and dignity. The environment has become a silent job coach for River in this instance. And this is where it matters for policy when you're designing spaces. When we design workspaces this way, we're not just supporting one individual. We truly are removing barriers. We're breaking those barriers down. We free up the job coach's time for things like skills development, career coaching, and supporting even more employees at work, ultimately, when they have that much time where they're not constantly repeating instructions, where the environment truly is a partner in that supported employment scheme. When the environment is built to truly empower everyone, we enable roles to be performed independently, consistently, and safely. And we make supported employment scalable, not exceptional. It starts to build on a framework that can be repeated. It builds on learning. And really, this is not a nice to have when you're building universally, when you're building to support every type of person. It is really a practical, repeatable design approach that delivers both social impact and operational value ultimately. If we want inclusive environments to scale, we cannot design support only around people. We must design it into the environment as well, because when the built environment works as the support system, independence becomes the default, not the exception in that instance. Next slide, please. Thank you. And as that system is built, where the built environment is supporting people, you start to create a sense of belonging. Because really, when you employ anyone into any space, they don't just work in that space that you've created for them. It's not, this is the space that you are. People need to go and use the break rooms, need lunch rooms, they need to get, across for a walk, different things. People need to get to different places. So supported employees don't just work in one place. They need access to the whole workplace, because that's where culture, connection, and belonging starts to happen. If someone cannot independently navigate spaces, find what they need, or use shared facilities, they don't just face barriers, they become socially segregated. Um, Even when successfully hired in a role, the impact is almost immediate. This is why there is a strong need for the built environment to continue to support. Um, And you see with that social segregation, you start to see immediate impact where it lowers their confidence or it reduces their participation with the rest of the team or weakens that sense of belonging which we all want to have in any place and ultimately can lead to a retention risk. So to truly scale supported employment, I'm a big advocate saying we must design workspaces that support independence, not rely on support to, compensate for design, but design should be that support. This is where the built environment truly matters. It progresses, here. There's one saying I really like to say. It really is it's progress. It's not perfection. It starts small and grow, right? So things like maybe starting with clear wayfinding, building accessible standards around the workplace, so it's easily repeatable if you have several different office sites or campuses. Sending out pre-arrival information. We'll like to know ahead of time when we're heading somewhere or if we're visiting somewhere, we want to know what to expect. So if people can be presented with that, it readies the mind mentally. So you're not getting that cognitive overload when people arrive at a building. Um, these are not features. These are enablers, so to say. They reduce that onboarding variability. They increase, site readiness. They increase the person's readiness to be on site, and allows people to move confidently between environments. So that's how supported employment becomes scalable and sustainable. I sound biased because I'm an architect and the built environment, and I'm saying, hey, it's, the built environment truly helps. But truly, I think it's one of the greatest partners to support in a supported employment scheme. Now, because when people can access shared spaces independently, they don't just do their job, they belong, and then they join in conversations, they build relationships, they're part of something bigger, and this invariably impacts the business. And this is where you see this natural avenue for chance encounters and innovation and all-round growth and innovation that benefits every single person. So it's not just one aspect, it actually is on a bigger scale, a much bigger scale. When the environment supports, it brings everybody together. People can feel a sense of belonging, people are part of something, and innovation starts to thrive because people are connected. So if we want inclusive employment to scale, we must design for belonging first, not just access, because belonging is not accidental. It is designed, it is an intentional design when you're looking at making your spaces inclusive and universal. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is my final slide, and on the top section of my slide here, you can see it shows the opportunity. There's about 16% of the world living with significant disability, and the stats there says 3 in 10 are active in the labor force today. So there's a huge opportunity there. We see that diversity has propelled many businesses and teams to better outcomes and delivering innovative solutions that betters every single person. So my question is, why not? If there's a tried framework that works, there are the people looking to go into the labor market, and you have the coaches ready to support them. If buildings are intentionally designed to care, these can now support the job coaches to support even more people. So again, my question is, why not? Why not grow and scale a supported employment program? So start small and grow. Now, you'll see in the lower section of my slide, of my page here, my slide page here, it shows some of the stats from the Microsoft Supported Employment Program. And my colleague Gillian is going to come on right now and share a bit more about the program with you. And it really is exciting to see how it's grown. Susan touched a lot on that origin story, which I really enjoyed. Thank you, Susan. But as I close on this, I'd like to take away, or I'd like us to take away the core principles here is that accessible environments function as silent job coaches. They embed independence into our physical spaces so that human support can be redirected from logistics to career development and supporting even more people. So designing environments that remove barriers, enable supported employees to become independent contributors, which can spark further innovation for businesses, business win there. And, final takeaway for the day is that accessible workplaces are not just inclusive, they are employment infrastructure, and investing in a built environment directly reduces the burden on the job coaches. It accelerates integration of supported employees into workplace culture and sustains that long-term retention that defines supported employment success, which is ultimately what we want. We want people to join on the program and enjoy the culture in the place, have the environment support them so they're confident, they have the sense of belonging, and then they're staying on the role because they enjoy it. And then there's opportunity for growth for them in those roles. I strongly advocate that the built environment is that, silent coach that can help support that and help to start to build a really strong framework for everyone. And I'll pass it over to my colleague Jillian right now. Thank you very much for having me today. Jillian.
Thank you so much, Emma. That was wonderful. Wow, I have to follow Susan and Emma. What an incredible introduction. So thank you so much, everybody, for having me. Delighted to be here. My name is Jillian McGuire. I am a 60-something-year-old with beautiful flowing gray locks of hair. Wearing my black jacket and my glasses today with a blurred background. So happy to be here with all of you. I get to talk now a little bit about how did we take this concept at Microsoft from Susan's origin story through this maturing and evolution that has happened at Microsoft. Just to give you another bit of background about me, I started my career at the protection and advocacy system in Washington State, which is called Disability Rights Washington. And one of the big things that people with disabilities will tell protection and advocacy systems as far as what their priorities are for civil rights assistance is employment. People with disabilities, as you are all very well aware, experience a lot of barriers to employment. So it seemed like a really great opportunity for me to move in to assist Microsoft with this program when I was hired at CBRE about 10 years ago. And it's been nothing but an incredible journey of growth and scaling this program over those years, in direct partnership, of course, with Microsoft. This is their program. Emma is my client, and with partners, amazing partners like Susan and Wise in the community. So let's go on to the next slide, please. So again, just really want to emphasize the mission here is at Microsoft in our program is to partner with supplier companies to Microsoft, and then also with local employment agencies to create meaningful job opportunities for people with intellectual developmental disabilities who might otherwise be overlooked in the job market. It's worth saying it again, the partnership is really core to this program and is really key to the success of the scaling and growth of the program. The collage of photographs is not just something that we got off the internet. These are photographs of actual people who work or have worked at Microsoft locations around the globe. And if you look closely, you can see some little hints in most of these photographs as far as the types of jobs that people are doing. And one thing I really want to call out here is the extreme variety of jobs that people are doing at Microsoft locations. And it has to do with the fact that we have so many supplier companies that have leaned in and said, yes, we would like to hire people through this program. And also the variety of locations. What that lends itself to is over 40 different job types that people with developmental disabilities have been hired to do, which really sparks the imagination when it comes to, okay, we've done this, can we do more? How can we scale this and grow this? So let's go on to the next slide. So you all know these program values. These are the values of competitive integrated employment, but we talk about this within the Microsoft program, these values repeatedly, because people have assumptions about employment for people with disabilities, and we like to bust those assumptions as often as possible. So for us at Microsoft within this program, and this is something that Microsoft relays out to its supplier partners, Folks that are hired through this program are doing real work, real jobs. So these are things that those suppliers need to do in order to provide services to Microsoft. People are paid the going rate for the work that they do. Microsoft has actually taken a policy position in opposition to sub-minimum wage in the United States and has been working actively with Congress on that issue. This is flexible opportunities for people. We have people, many of whom have started in part-time positions. There are also opportunities for full-time roles. And we do have some examples of individuals who have moved from part-time into full-time as they've mastered the tasks that they've been hired to do, and the opportunity has been offered to them to go to full-time. It's integrated, meaning that folks are working alongside non-disabled peers. That has a great influence on the culture of Microsoft and the supplier companies, of course. We do have career growth opportunities. This is an area where we can always do better. There's always more work that we can do around career growth, but we do have some great examples of people moving within these supplier organizations and increasing their career trajectories and having new opportunities, new hours, new titles, promotions, increased income as a result of their jobs. And then finally, of course, this is a community-based program. So for us at Microsoft, we're in the community. And what that means is that going into the cafe, walking through the campuses, going to events, you're running into, getting to know, getting to chat with individuals with developmental disabilities that are working on the Microsoft campus. They are part of the community, if you like. So let's go on to the next slide. So we are a very matrixed place. So this is I think one of the benefits of a program like this being at a large company like Microsoft. I know that this is not sort of true for smaller companies, but when there are larger companies involved, often they are outsourced in a lot of what they do, things that are not the core of what their products are. So that's the case at Microsoft. In real estate and facilities, or global workplace strategy part of Microsoft, a lot of the service level work, the day-to-day that keeps Microsoft running smoothly, is actually outsourced to supplier companies who are experts at what they do. So we have developed relationships with those suppliers to encourage them to hire individuals into their companies directly. And those include, I've got a list here of the different industries that we've engaged, and also then some of the actual employers that are involved in the program. So there are companies, different ones, that provide food and event services to support Microsoft here in the US, but then different ones in global locations around the world, such as Compass Group and Sodexo, both involved in the program now. Facilities management. You got to make sure the HVAC system is working and the lights are working and the doors closed properly. Those things are handled by facilities maintenance companies. And that's the company I work for, is CBRE. But also there's multitudes of others that are participating in the program and have hired people thanks to this program. There's landscaping, there's reception work going on in the lobbies, there's mail and package handling. There's an outrageous amount of mail that comes and goes out of Microsoft. I wish I had the number off the top of my head, but it would blow your mind how much stuff comes in and out. And that all has to be handled. And we have several supported employees working on that at the Microsoft headquarters. First aid equipment, security, janitorial services, transportation. At the headquarters of Microsoft, there are small shuttles that move people around campus and large buses, coaches that move Microsoft FTEs from the community into work and back home every day. We have supported employees working at that company, Transwest. And then fire and life safety. Johnson Controls has hired a supported employee to do fire extinguisher auditing, which is a fantastic role, and he's knocking it out of the park. He's one of the most productive members of his team. Don't tell them I said that. So this is just gives you a sense of the complexity and the potential reach of this program, because as we speak to each individual supplier company, we invite them to come into this program and be part of it and tap into this way to bring in talent for the things that they need to do anyway. We're just paving the way for them to connect with these employment agencies and hire individuals with disabilities. So let's see what we have on the last slide. So of course, we've talked a lot about this. What are this program impacts? You all already know what the program impacts are, but really some of the lessons that we've learned along the way with this program, which is now, 13 years old. Obviously, the impacts for individuals, there's a myriad of impacts, obviously, but the most basic impacts are giving people a steady source of income and independence and building people's sense of independence. From the business perspective, of course, you're tapping into this diverse community of thinkers, people that think about and problem solve differently. So businesses can learn from the people that they hire. The businesses get to connect better into their local communities and into the community of people with developmental disabilities. And then obviously this is scalable. You do not have to start this as a huge multinational, multi-level effort. You can start as a pilot, start small, grow from there and learn what you're learning as you go along so you can customize it to your specific situation. As Emma said as well, start small and grow these efforts. So with that, I am very happy to be joining Susan on Thursday for the office hour. So I'm happy to be there to answer any questions you all might have that we don't get to today. And I am absolutely thrilled to be able to hand the floor over to colleagues working at Microsoft at Compass Group, Mike Shea and Tara O'Rourke, and just thrilled to be able to hand it over to them and have them talk to you a little bit about Tara's experience at Compass. Thanks for coming, Tara and Mike. Over to you.
Thank you, Jillian. Appreciate that. Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Shea. I'm a white male in my 50s. I have short brown hair, wearing glasses, and a dark polo shirt. Tara, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Oh, wait, is that unmuted? Okay. My name's Tara. I'm a white woman in my 30s with blonde hair. I have worked for Compass Group on Microsoft campus as a cafe attendant for 12 years.
Excellent. So, Tara, glad to be here with you today. Can you tell us a little bit about what your job looks like? How would you
Yeah.
explain it to somebody?
Oh, yes, of course. I restock. I like to go around and restock napkins. That's what I do, and the plastic cutlery. And I polish silverware every morning, and I restock chips and condiments. And I like to go around and sweep. That's what and clean, make sure everything's nice and tidy.
Excellent, excellent. And what are some things that you like most about your job?
I really enjoy seeing all my coworkers and being part of the community and seeing so many uh, new faces and people coming in and having lunch. And I enjoy trying a lot of new foods and having new opportunities to learn new tasks and grow and become a better person.
Excellent, excellent. And at work, what are some things that help you be successful doing what you do? What kind of support do you get?
I have a job coach, and checklist. I use checklists and alarm clocks on my phone, and I use an alarm clock on my Apple Watch to make sure I have the right time set. So, and I have extra check-ins with managers, and I take it's in here over in King County in Seattle, Washington. It's called door-to-door access Metro Transit. It's called Access Transportation, and that's how I get to work. But I'm curb to curb, which means the drivers don't walk me to the door. And in every state and country, it's something completely different.
Wonderful, wonderful. When you are at work, or even before work, what does a typical day for you look like?
I like to wake up very early, and when I do, I get ready. I wear my uniform, which consists of black pants, non non-slip resistant shoes, and my shirt is gray, and my hat is like a reddish color, and it says Food Hall 4 on it. And Access will come pick me up at home and drop me off right in front, which I schedule all by myself. I make all my Access rides on my own. I get to work early because I like to have time so I can get breakfast, which breakfast opens at 8 a.m. and I clock in around 10 a.m. I use the clock in time clock. And once I clock in, I polish silverware. Sometimes I portion condiments. Sometimes, if that's needed, I clean salad bar and restock cutlery and napkins and chips. And then after that, I will take my 10-minute break at 12:50. And I like to have a little snack and something to drink, usually water, Gatorade. I go, and then after my 10-minute break, I like to go around and sweep the cafe, sweep up anything that's messy. And then at 1:30, I clock out using the time clock. And my shift is 3.5 hours, and I have Fridays off and Saturdays and Sundays off.
Nice, nice. And I know what kind of skills you bring to the job, but tell everyone, what skills do you bring to the job? Why are you successful at what you do?
I'm always ready to help, really eager to help, and I enjoy helping. And I notice when things need to be restocked or when something's completely out of place, or if we're sometimes, I don't know what happens with the silverware. Sometimes people take it out of the building. I know when that needs to be.
Yeah.
We need more silverware like forks, not plastic cutlery, but just regular sil silverware. And I'm always reliable and on time, and I have a positive, great attitude. And I look for ways to make the cafe better and stronger, like how we need more silverware all the time because I don't know where it's ending up.
Yes, I do know about the silverware. We'll work on that for you
We'll
next
work
week
on
for
that.
sure. What type of Microsoft technology have you
Um,
used or do you use at work?
Well, during COVID, I learned how to use Microsoft Teams during COVID to check in with coworkers and managers, and that was kind of tough times during COVID. And then I learned how to use a time clock app on my phone, and it made me better at using all my apps on my phone. And I also learned how to be a professional at Zoom and everything like that.
Nice, nice. And what are some things outside of work? What are some things that you like to do?
I go to the YMCA right after work and I work out there for a couple hours. And then I do Special Olympics track and field. And I do Special Olympics bowling, which is really great. And I enjoy FaceTiming with my family and my nephew. And I hang out with friends. We go to try different, me and my friends will go try different restaurants and we critique the food sometimes in the restaurants.
Do the restaurants have silverware?
Yeah, they do.
Okay, I
Sometimes.
assume so.
Depends.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Um, as far as support, what kind of support do you use at work that helps you outside of work? What are some things
I
that
I
have helped you?
advocate for myself and the community, and I went to Advocacy Day, which is in Olympia at the Capitol of Olympia, and that was in February. And I talked to legislators about different things and topics, like how um, and so that was a great thing to do. And for the first time ever, I learned how to take the train to Portland all by myself to visit my family. And I scheduled access to take me down to Seattle to the train station. And then when I got to Portland, Union Station, I use it's called TriMet, which is like the same as Access up here in Seattle. And it took me to my sister's house. TriMet Lyft took me to my sister's house.
That's tremendous. That's awesome. And you did that a lot by yourself, correct?
Yeah, and I can teach other people how to do that sometime.
Wow, I don't think I've even done that. That's awesome. Thank you, Tara, for sharing that. I appreciate your time, Tara. I'm going to hand it over to Megan. Thank you very much, Tara.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tara and Mike. Let me just get our video spotlight switched really quick as I rejoin everyone on camera. Let me see. Donald, our technical producer, if you're able to spotlight me again, great. Thank you. All right. So, first off, want to just say thank you to everyone who presented so far. We are going to go to the next slide and go into the Q&A portion of our event. And we did receive some questions through registration, although not too many. And we do invite folks to submit questions to the Q&A pod as well, and we'll answer those as we have time. So feel free to submit questions through the Q&A pod for our speakers today. As a reminder, we heard from Susan, Emma, Jillian, Mike, and Tara. So feel free to check out the slides at the link in the chat in case you want to revisit something. And we'll start to kind of address some questions. Now let me take a look at the Q&A and give me a moment while I figure out what questions we can go to. All right. So first off, I'll have a question for Jillian. Just with the slide of suppliers, is that a combination of employers on record, a percent that are Microsoft employees versus a percent that are supplier employees like CBRE as a disability services provider? If you would be able to speak to that, Jillian?
Yeah, definitely. And it's a great question. It comes up all the time. This program is designed to face the suppliers to Microsoft. So the suppliers to Microsoft are the ones that are being invited to hire people through the program. So on that particular slide, all of the listed suppliers they're not Microsoft. These individuals are being hired by suppliers to Microsoft. So and CBRE, just to be clear, I may have misspoken at some point, but CBRE is a corporate real estate and facilities management international global corporation. CBRE does not provide disability services. What we do is we come alongside clients like Microsoft and thousands of other large corporations, and we do things like make sure that their facilities are operating the way that they want them to operate, making sure the HVAC system works, making sure that people are moving around on the campuses the way they want them. We do a lot of program management and project management. So that is why this program sits with CBRE, because program management is one of the things CBRE does for Microsoft. So the program, again, faces suppliers. And this is where the matrixing is really helpful, because we actually can tap into many, many different employers just by having me talk to them. Over the course of this program, over 70 different supplier companies to Microsoft have hired individuals with intellectual developmental disabilities who have job coaches all around the globe. So this gives Microsoft actually a very large reach in terms of this program to other supplier companies. Sorry, that was very long and blah, blah, blah. Apologies. But that's the answer to the question.
That's
Thanks.
okay. No,
Thanks, Megan.
we have plenty of time. Yeah, no, and thanks
Great.
for addressing that question. All right. Let me see what else we've gotten in the Q&A, and thanks everyone for your patience while I multitask here to figure things out. And also I will invite Susan, Jillian, Mike, or Tara, if you do see something in the Q&A that you would like to respond to, absolutely we can prioritized as well.
Can I jump in on Jillian's answer, Megan?
Yeah,
real
please.
briefly. If you think about the origin story and you think about that champion from Microsoft that went to the parent night, he oversaw the global real estate and facilities area for Microsoft. He was overseeing the suppliers, the contracting with suppliers at Microsoft locations around the globe. So when he thought about influence, he knew that he could influence suppliers to hire people. And I know it's been strange within, starting to develop it here in Puget Sound and then growing it and speaking about it. People always ask, why do it this way? However, the thing that I think people miss is this has exponential influence, because very, very large employers like Jillian mentioned have been influenced to start their own hiring efforts, not only as suppliers to Microsoft, but in their other efforts all over the place with other potential contracts that they hold. So it's really had massive influence. And I don't know, Jillian, someday I think we ought to think about, could we gather numbers about how many people have been hired, just an estimated number, because of this influence of this program to those suppliers that have so much reach. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's figure that out, Susan. I see there's a question that's kind of related, Megan, if that's all right.
Yeah, go for it.
From Peggy Schmidt. Do you collect any data or have any idea as to how many of the supplier companies, sorry, I'm speaking very quickly for the ASL interpreters, apologies, hire people at different contract sites outside of Microsoft locations? That is another fantastic question, Peggy. That is another example of the way that this has exponential influence. And the answer to that is not enough, as far as I know. There is some activity going on, and I actively support suppliers when they figure out that they can embed this concept into how they recruit beyond the Microsoft contract that they're on. So I will connect them with local coaching agencies or local contacts to try to build something that's bigger and reaches into other clients that they have. Not enough, but that does happen, and we have actually supported some of that growth in the past. It's not enough for me to sort of have data I can sort of pull out and hand to you here, unfortunately, but that's future growth goals right there.
Thanks so much, Jillian, for responding to that. And I think that addresses a couple of questions, because I saw quite a few about kind of data. The next question that we wanted to go to was one around benefits planning and kind of how that fits into the process with supported employment. I don't know if Susan or Jillian, you might be able to speak to that.
Maybe I can jump in first and you can jump in as well, Jillian, to fill in any gaps. My organization, WISE, has created a benefits planning service that provides free service for individuals with IDD in Washington State. We also have a component of a benefits network that includes benefits planners from other systems that are able to provide benefits planning services. And so that has been developed as I have developed my skills in employment, even clear back into the late 80s, early 90s. It was very obvious that benefits became a disruptor to the ability of individuals to feel like they could go to work, that they could be promoted, that they could accept opportunities. So that has been something that has been in development for a long time. And we have shared information with CBRE, with Microsoft, with all of the suppliers as the need arises around addressing benefits issues, not to expect them to be the specialist, but to be able to tell them that sometimes the things you hear at first pass aren't necessarily accurate, and that we have benefits planning services to help an individual to really understand what an individual's own unique situation is, and if there are any concerns, and how to address those concerns. So we've been able to partner with Microsoft on that as well. So I had mentioned that when there have been things that have come up that have been of concern, we can go in and do training of the managers, the hiring managers, to help address issues, to let them know the services available. But we also have triaged cases when there's been a big change. Like in 2022, there was a big change where a lot of suppliers were increasing the wages for supported employees, as well as their other employees, to try to make sure that they were providing a living wage, and that it did include individuals that have been hired through this program. We were able to take a look at who might be impacted and to prioritize who should enter into benefits planning services if they wanted. And in doing that, we reached out to those suppliers. We reached out to the job coach entities that were serving people, and we provided easy access to the benefits planning services. I think in the end, we did in-depth benefits analysis to about 70 people in a very short amount of time. And we analyzed around 160 situations to try to figure out if there were any red flags and if we needed to get in there right away. So that has been an amazing partnership that I think is quite unique.
The only thing I would
Absolutely.
add to that,
Yeah.
Susan, is the word you just said, which is partnership. I mean, really, if those situations had occurred and someone was asking me to answer benefits questions, I would not have the information I needed. So this is where the continued partnership with WISE has proven so valuable to the evolution of the program. It's interesting to me. I will often hear from managers in the supplier companies who are involved in the program. I will often hear them talk about how people will lose their benefits if they give them a raise. It comes up all the time, to the point where I'm not sure where they're getting it because I'm not telling them, but they're hearing it through the ether. They may be hearing it through the supported employees themselves. It's possible they're hearing it through family members. So there's this like persistent worry that employers face of people becoming impoverished if they give them just a little bit more income, give them a little raise, or a few more hours. And so there's a lot of work to be done in disabusing employers of that information, but only thanks to the partnership with Benefit You and WISE, because we do have someone to lean on to assist in a situation where people really have real individualized scenarios. They need someone to sit down with them and analyze what will actually happen and what can I do in order to address this opportunity that's been given to me, my employer, to increase my hours, increase my wages, etc.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Jillian, for chiming in on that. All right, next I want to go to Tara for a question. So, Tara, I know you already talked a little bit about some of the tools and technology that you're using, like on your phone, that are things that can kind of supplement the built environment and accessibility. Can you talk a little bit more about how you use your tools and technology, and if there's anything else you use on the job or to support your day-to-day work?
I use checklists so I know what I'm doing. So I know what to and job coach.
That's great. Thanks for talking a little bit more about that. I'll see Mike or anyone else have anything else to add as far as technology or tools that kind of support the built environment.
Yeah, I'll add one thing. I know with Compass, we do have a lot of yearly trainings that we do through our apps, whether it's safety training, food, allergy type trainings that all of our team members do. So Tara, along with her job coach, will kind of help make sure she gets all those trainings through her computer, on her phone. So she does use a lot of those also.
Megan, you're muted.
Thanks so much. I didn't realize that. I was saying, if anyone else is seeing anything in the Q&A, please feel free to chime in and respond to a question, but I'm looking right now to see what we have. So someone asked about if there's any materials to share with potential employers that, might not have exposure or need more training to be a supportive employer in their workplace. I don't know if there's any resources that we could refer folks to. I know we shared some links in the chat previously, kind of background and approach on Microsoft's program, but see if there's any additional context or ideas Jillian, Susan, or others can respond to there.
I would just say to let all of you know the links to the Microsoft information, the Microsoft website, it's public facing. Everything on there is available for you to download and use. You could even download a toolkit, and if you'd like to a graphic in there or something speaks to you, you can just pull it out of there and use it in your own PowerPoints. You don't even have to give credit to Microsoft if you don't want to. You're welcome to use our videos as well. Those are Microsoft branded, so you'll be able to see that. But the stories that are relayed in those videos, and there's several trainings on the website as well, you're very welcome to use those. Those stories really, they speak so much louder than most presentations in my mind. Seeing somebody actually doing the job and integrated into the workplace really speaks volumes, and it helps opens people's thinking about what's possible. So you're very welcome to use all of those materials however you would like to on the Microsoft website.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jillian. And I dropped the link to the supported employment page in the chat. So I encourage folks to check that out. There's tons of links on there and resources. So be sure to take a look. I saw a question about from Debbie about, would you expand on the role of the job coach and the job coaching agencies at Microsoft? I don't know, Jillian, if you want to start with that. And then Susan, if you have anything else to add on, go ahead. Oh, and Jillian, you're on mute. Sorry.
I unmuted and then I muted myself again.
I get it.
Just for effect. Yeah. So thanks, Debbie. No, I really cannot state strongly enough how important the job coaches are in the Microsoft program. Once the employer, the supplier company to Microsoft decides to hire an individual who has a job coach, that job coach stays attached to provide services and support to that individual as they onboard, and then as needed, according to their needs, according to their service plan, over time stays with them to provide services. We have some examples on the Microsoft campus. There's one individual who works in the the landscaping team, whose job coach is with him 100% of the time and has worked for that company for, I think, 7 years now. And so that job coach is attached to them the entire time and provides supports to them as needed the entire time that they're working, which is kind of mind-blowing, I think, for some of the employers to understand that the coaching can dial in to the need of the individual and is funded through government entities. So I rely very heavily on the coaches being able to come onto campus, go into the location where people are working, inside the kitchen, inside the recycle center, inside of the facility management team, to support individuals day to day. And they also come in as needed if there are evaluation meetings or if there's something disciplinary happening, the coach is alongside. I'm always encouraging the employer to keep the coach in the loop of communication as needed. So the coaches are a critical component of this program. The thing that they don't do, the one thing that Microsoft sort of flipped on its head a little bit about this program, that is not typical for supported employment, is we asked the coaches not to job develop on campus. So, and why? Why is that? Why would that be? Well, Microsoft is protecting the interests of the supplier companies. We have over 90 coaches who come in day to day, in and out of every single nook and cranny of the Microsoft world day to day to support people that are working. So we wanted to protect the suppliers from having 90 job coaches job developing with them every day, and them having to then manage that sort of communication. So instead of the coaches coming in and job developing, we have a relationship with the job coaches that if they see an opportunity, if they're talking to a manager and hear of an opportunity, they will loop me in and I can continue that conversation with the managers. So it actually takes a burden off the job coaches to do job development, because I think that is a rough and hard job. And they can focus on coaching, which is a huge skill they bring to the table that we're very happy to have their help with. I think think that gets at what Debbie's after there, but let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Jillian. So this is kind of a combination of questions that we received, but I had a couple of questions about people in specific states that are maybe looking to figure out, how do they get started to develop a similar program, and want to just see if you have recommendations for, where to maybe start out, whether it's starting small or approaching a large business to establish this sort of program. And I know that's a loaded question, so I'll give you a minute to digest too.
I would say look for champions. Champions are the thing that makes the point of contact that makes things happen, and they are everywhere. And so when you're thinking about who is going to carry that message forward and influence a decision, champions are so important, and they are within the group of parents that you are communicating with often in the process of communicating with individuals. So never underestimate the power of parents, because they really do become champions in their other parts of their world, their other lives, in their jobs. The other thing is that you can look at the supplier companies that Microsoft works with and see potential places where you might be able, whether there's a Microsoft campus in a particular area is not essential to CBRE or Compass or other suppliers having hiring initiatives all over the place. So I would look to see, are there connections to corporations that have stepped into this in a big way and made a commitment to hire in other ways, so that it's a lot easier to influence them. It really, you can take a look at the history of this whole program and pick up little nuggets that can really fast track your efforts wherever you are. And I think that's essential, because you can see this took decades in development, but you don't have to take decades in order to get things off the ground. You can learn from and apply the information from just what you've learned here to elevating your efforts wherever you are.
I would just add one other tip to what Susan said, and I agree with her. There's lots of different potential champions out there at different companies. I would also suggest taking a look at an organization called Disability In. Disability In is a business-to-business organization based in the US. It is now a global, or becoming a global organization, where Fortune 500 companies talk to each other about their own internal practices around disability hiring and disability inclusion. And they are learning from each other how to do things better in terms of disability hiring. Those companies that are in those conversations, they are interested in this topic. Some of them have offices in your necks of the wood. There would be people on your boards of directors potentially that are part of those companies. There are ways to dig into those companies. Chambers of Commerce is another sort of good way to make connections into your company, to find those champions and to foster those relationships. And again, you're welcome to use the Microsoft example if you want. If there's pieces of it you find valuable, please feel free to, slice and dice and share what you think is actually useful and applicable in your situation. Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, Jillian and Susan. We can talk offline, but there's a couple requests for contact information from the different presenters. So I don't know if, Mike, you want to take a look at the Q&A pod, and if you're willing to share your contact info, there's a request there. Let me see here and look at our time. I think we've covered a good number of questions, so I'm going to wrap up Q&A and just thank everyone for their contributions to answering these questions, and we might still respond to a couple in the Q&A pod. If your questions were not answered, I want to give a special plug for our office hour on Thursday. Jillian and Susan are kind enough to join us for another hour of their time this week from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern on Thursday And that will be a little bit of a less formal setting for the office hours. So invite you to bring other questions or discussions or reflections that you'd like to talk through to that event on Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. And if I'm not mistaken, I think we'll be resharing that link in the chat momentarily. Donald, if you can move us along to the next slide. All right, I just want to say a huge thank you to the amazing lineup of speakers we had today from Microsoft, Wise, CBRE, and the Compass Group. We had a lot of really important players in this work on the call today who could share so many different perspectives, and we hope that this was really a rewarding event for our audience, and you learned a lot from what they have already done and accomplished in this work at Microsoft and in collaboration with Microsoft. And specifically, thank you to the speakers just for taking times out of their busy schedules to be here with us today. And a special shout out for Tara and Mike to kind of really share that personal perspective and more of a dialogue of kind of what things look like in practice. That's really valuable. So we can go to the next slide. Here is a link to all of the resources that, or most, at least most of the resources that we talked about in today's event, and they're copied in the chat as well. I did see like one participant followed up and they were having an issue with a firewall potentially. So we'll reach out directly over email to close the loop with you to get a copy of a couple of those links you couldn't get to. And then we can go to the next slide. All right, I already talked about this, but yeah, if you still have questions, please join us again on Thursday for a slightly smaller event that where you can ask questions and share reflections and really dig into today's topic in more depth with Susan and Jillian. And that's this Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And then Donald, we can go to the next slide. All right, so just want to shout out our DETAC, the Disability Employment Technical Assistance Center, which is funded by the Administration on Disabilities within the Administration on Community Living. Our website is listed on this slide and dropped in the chat. We also offer on-demand technical assistance specifically to grantees of the Administration on Disabilities. And you can find the request form for that at the link in the chat, as well as on this slide for on-demand TA requests for AOD grantees. And with that, Donald, we can go to the next slide. And I believe this is our last slide. We really hope you enjoyed today's event. You took away a lot that you can apply in your own context. That said, we would greatly appreciate your feedback through our post-webinar evaluation, which will also open automatically at the end of this event. If you could please take a moment to fill that out and give us some feedback, we would really appreciate it. Thank you again to all of our speakers, and I believe that brings us to the end of today's event. Thanks again for being with us, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or night, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you.